Hi everyone, Talia from Zart Art. Today we're going to be making a plasticine painting inspired by Hokusai's Great Wave. Now, we are using plasticine, so it's not technically a painting material or way of working that we're using, but the way you can use plasticine will create a very similar look to a painting, and we can create some really interesting textures. I'll also be using a wooden board, but any kind of board is fine to work with, as well as a reference image of the Great Wave for me to look back and get some inspiration from. I'm not going to copy the image completely, I'm just going to use it as a guide. Now to start off with, we grab some plasticine. This is some plasticine that I've pre-worked, so it's nice and warm. If you are in a colder environment, it's always a good idea to grab some plasticine and warm it up in your hands. About 30 seconds, if your piece is small, even less time, just to warm it up. So as you work with it, you'll feel it becomes much smoother. So I'll work with my already marbled pieces. So this is just some red, some light pink, and some white mixed together. And then I will spread this on my board to create the sky. So I'm working from background to foreground. So now I'm going to apply the plasticine to make the layer. If your plasticine isn't warm enough, then keep working it in your hand so you get a nice smooth texture. You'll see there are some parts of the plasticine that look a little bit rough, so that's just due to it not adhering to either the surface or the plasticine being too cold. So if you press it a little bit, you can get rid of the rough texture and keep warming up the rest of the plasticine in your hands. So as you can see, I've chosen some red tones for my sky to kind of replicate a sunset in Hokusai's original piece. It's more of a pale yellow, but I think it's a bit more interesting to change up the colours a little bit. So I'm going to keep going and filling up the sky layer, and then when we're finished we can move on to the next section. So as you're spreading the plasticine, you want to put it on quite firmly. The warmer the plasticine is, the less effort you'll have to put in. You can also use things like palette knives to help apply the plasticine, and it's nice to marble different colours together to get some different tones. So this kind of work could be done with a variety of different age levels. Definitely for high school, this would be something interesting for high school level kids to try out. If you're doing this with lower primary, you'd probably want to do something with a bit less detail and something on a smaller scale, just because the amount of effort that you have to put in, as well as strength in fingers, would probably be a bit beyond some of the younger kids. Okay, so we're nearly up to the next level of this painting. I'll just add in the little cloud that you can see in Hokusai's image. I'll just add a little bit more texture to the sky up here. I won't try to exactly copy his shape. I'll smooth the colours through so you can see where the thicker plasticine is, that there is a nice cloud texture in there. Great, so I'll leave that as is, and then we can move on to the next step. So the next step for this image is to create the waves, and you can see the waves are separated from the middle ground and the foreground. So what I'm going to do is start with the big wave on the left. I'll create that shape and then I'll fill in the gaps where the rest of the waves will go. So that's just a combination of smearing some of the blue plasticine as well as the black to to make some darker tones, and then I'll work over that with lighter tones. So now I'm just going to fill in the empty space with those wave shapes. If you're working with a limited palette of plasticine, you can also make your own colours. To do this, you just keep marbling the colours together until they do make a secondary colour. So if you're working with primaries, then you can make your own greens or your own purples or oranges just by mixing the two colours together. So as I'm spreading the plasticine on for the wave, I'm trying to apply it a much more thick coat, so then we can have some contrast between the background and the middle ground. So when you're making your waves, you can add a lot more plasticine to get that definition. And I'm also going to look at making some more of a rough texture. So as you can see where the waves are breaking, it's not as smooth as what the sky would be. Ow. Can you keep that on video? One of the great things about using plasticine is that it's always workable. So whether you want to change something that you've already put down, you can do another layer straight over the top, or you can still marble colours from underneath back on top. So now that I've worked a bit on the tones in the sky and I'm happy with the colours that are coming out, I'll go back to the wave and work on where the wave breaks. So you can see the white areas in the image break up where the waves start and finish. So I'll be working on top of my blue surface to create those definitions. So now to create these breaks, I'm using more hand modelling techniques. So to get those textures, it's really easy to dig your fingers in and pull a few chunks of plasticine away so it makes it look a bit more rough. You could also use things like palette knives or clay tools to create those textures as well. So now that I've finished with the waves, I think I'll leave it as is. The plasticine will always be workable, so if you want to make sure that you don't get any impressions stuck into it, or if you're finished working with it, you can always paint over a gloss or a sealer to set the image. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. How do we end these? I feel like I need a catchphrase.
Yeah.